It was Christmas morning. Snow fell quietly over Lake Oswego, Oregon. Everything looked peaceful, clean, but I stood alone at the front door of my son's mansion holding a gift wrapped in newspaper. The same kind I used to help him with homework years ago. He opened the door. He didn't smile. No Merry Christmas, no hug. Just one sentence, cold, precise like a knife. "I'm ashamed you're my father." Then the door closed, hard, in my face. I didn't knock again, didn't beg, didn't cry. Instead, I looked at the door, then looked at my hands. The same hands that built his first toy car, painted his bedroom walls, signed every school check. He didn't just shut me out, he erased me. But what Ethan didn't know was that I wasn't just a father. I was the man behind his empire, and I didn't come here just to be humiliated. I had made one phone call just an hour before, and by the end of this day he'd remember who I really was. This is a story of a father, a builder, a man forgotten by the very son he raised, but also a story of revenge, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't shout, it knocks, then walks away with everything. There was a time when he used to run into my arms, covered in grease, holding a half-finished toy truck we built together in the garage. He'd say, "Dad, let's make it fly today." And I'd laugh, because even if I'd just finished a 12-hour shift, those 10 minutes with him mattered more than any paycheck. We didn't have much. Dinner was often beans and toast, but we had stories. Lego spaceships on the kitchen table, cardboard castles built from old refrigerator boxes. Christmas. It wasn't about gifts, it was about turning off the heater just long enough to power the tree lights, and roasting marshmallows over the stovetop like it was a fireplace. He never complained, not once. Ethan used to think I was a magician. He'd say I could fix anything, and for a while I believed it too. Even when the roof leaked, even when the heater broke down in December, even when his mother was dying in the other room. I held it all together because he needed me to be unbreakable. But kids grow up. They stop asking you to fix things. They start seeing the world differently. And sometimes they forget where the foundation came from. Now, standing in front of that closed door, I couldn't help but remember the boy who once looked at me like I was the whole universe, and wonder, when did I stop being enough? My name is Frank Miller. I'm 68 years old, retired mechanic, widower, father of one. I live in Bend, Oregon. Small town, big sky. People know each other's names at the grocery store. My house, 2 bedrooms. 1 bath, garage I never stopped using. I built it with my own hands. Every nail, every beam. Same hands that held Ethan when he had night terrors. Same hands that turned rusted engines into working machines. I never went to college, didn't wear a suit to work, but I never missed a day. Rain, snow, heat, I showed up. While other dads were at PTA meetings, I was under cars saving every dime so Ethan could be somewhere better. I fixed engines, he fixed code. I believed that if I worked hard enough, he'd never have to know struggle. He wouldn't need to worry about broken heaters or overdue bills. And he didn't. But in protecting him from hardship, maybe I also erased myself. Because the older he got, the more he looked at me, like I was just a remnant of a life he wanted to escape. A life that smelled like oil and burned toast. Not boardrooms and IPOs, but I was proud of that life, still am, even if he isn't. There was an offer once, 20 years ago. A young guy named Tom Bright Hungry asked me to join him on a tech venture. He needed someone who could translate real-world problems into real-world code. I said no, because that year Ethan needed braces, and his mother was starting to get sick. So instead, I took on night shifts, 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. Oil-stained hands, permanently tired eyes. Coffee was my dinner. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, even his first science fair win. I was under a truck when they called to say he'd won state champion, but I made sure his tuition was paid in full. No loans, no debt. He graduated from Stanford with honors. I watched from the back row. Didn't want to embarrass him. Wore the one blazer I had still smelled like the garage. He smiled at me that day, but it felt distant, like he had already moved on to a world I didn't belong in. I used to tell myself it was worth it. Every hour, every dollar, every missed meal, because that's what fathers do. They build, and then step back so their kids can shine. But now I wonder, what's the cost of raising someone for the world only for them to forget where they came from? Ethan made it, he really did. By 32, he was CEO of a rising tech company in Portland. App for Smart Logistics or something like that. It made headlines. He was on Forbes, front cover, young, clean, sharp. The kid who once scraped his knees riding a bike I fixed now had his own corner office with glass walls and leather chairs. I was proud. Still am. But something shifted. Calls became shorter. Holidays became hectic. Dad, I'll fly down next month turned into something came up maybe next quarter. He stopped visiting. And when he did, he flinched at the smell of the garage. Once he brought his girlfriend. Nice girl. Wore heels on gravel. Looked around my house like it was an antique shop. She asked if I had Wi-Fi. I said no. She smiled, awkwardly. Ethan never said it, but I could feel it. The gap, the silent judgment, the unspoken shame. He started calling me Frank in public. Not Dad, just Frank. Success changed him. Or maybe it revealed him. He built walls of glass and steel. And somewhere along the way, he locked the door behind me. Christmas morning. I drove 2 hours from Bend to Portland. Woke up at 5, shaved. Pressed my only white shirt. The gift was simple. A book of vintage patents. Marked with sticky notes my favorite designs I thought he might like. He loved blueprints as a boy. Said lines made more sense than words. I parked down the street. Didn't want to block the Teslas in his driveway. His house was modern. Flat roof. Too perfect. Like it didn't want to be lived in, just looked at. There were voices inside. Laughter. Clinking glasses. Christmas jazz playing low. I walked up the stone path, knocked twice, smiled. A security guy opened the door. Tall, sunglasses, earpiece. "Sir, are you on the guest list?" I paused. I'm his father. He looked down at a tablet. Swiped, tapped. "I'm sorry, I don't see a Frank Miller listed here." He didn't say it with malice, just like it was policy, like I was a delivery. I stepped back, looked past him. Saw Ethan at the far end of the room holding a glass of wine. He saw me. He hesitated, then turned away. Didn't even nod. Didn't even blink. I stood there for a second, then handed the gift to the guard. "Just make sure he gets this." And I walked away, into the cold. Hands empty, heart even emptier. That night I sat alone in my garage. Lights off. Just the sound of a space heater ticking in the corner. I didn't eat, didn't turn on the TV. Just sat there watching snow pile up against the window. Then my phone buzzed. It was a live stream. Sent by mistake, from one of Ethan's business partners. A holiday pitch, private dinner with investors, all dressed in suits, wine, laughter, a fire crackling behind them. And then Ethan stood up, tapped a glass, smiled like he owned the room. He was confident, polished, everything I once hoped he'd be, until he said, "I built this company from nothing. I didn't come from privilege. My father passed when I was young. Everything I am, I became on my own." I froze. The words echoed. my father passed, I became on my own. He didn't just leave me out, he buried me to make his story cleaner, more heroic, more profitable. One investor raised a glass. To legacy, he said. Ethan smiled. But not the smile I knew, not the boy who once hugged me at graduation. This was someone else, someone willing to erase blood for applause. In that moment, I didn't feel sad. I felt something colder, sharper. Not grief, not shame. Something closer to resolve. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in the garage. Same chair, same oil-stained floor, same quiet. It was colder than usual, but I didn't feel it. Not really. On the shelf beside me was a small photo frame, dusty, tucked behind a box of old wires. It was her, Marilyn, my wife, smiling in that summer dress she used to love. Back when we had less, but somehow more. I picked up the frame, wiped it clean with my sleeve. Her eyes still sparkled even after all these years. She would have known what to do. She always did. When Ethan broke his arm falling off the roof, she stayed calm. When I lost half my hours at the plant, she said, "We'll figure it out." She believed in building quietly, never shouting, just showing up. And that's what I did, every day, even when my hands ached, even when I was invisible. I looked at her picture and whispered, "You'd be ashamed of him, but I wonder if you'd be disappointed in me for staying quiet, for letting him rewrite the truth, for standing in the cold and just walking away." I set the frame back down, sat up straighter, and for the first time in years, I opened the drawer labeled legal. I wasn't done yet. In the bottom drawer of my old desk beneath tax files and pension statements was a folder labeled E-Drive. It was handwritten, faded marker. Ethan wrote it when he was 16. Inside, sketches, diagrams, lines of code printed from our old HP desktop. I flipped through the pages. Date stamped, signed, co-signed. His name and mine. Frank and Ethan Core Logic Build V1. It hit me like a freight train. I hadn't thought about that summer in years. We stayed up late for weeks. Me on the whiteboard, him on the laptop. We built an algorithm for inventory prediction. It was simple, efficient. He used it for his high school science fair. Years later, he rebranded it, rebuilt the front end, launched it as the foundation of his startup. But the core, the heart of it, still ours, still mine. I wasn't looking for credit, never had been. But if he was going to erase me, rewrite history for profit, I needed to remind him. I was never just the guy who fixed things. I was the architect of his first real win. I closed the folder, looked at the final page, and smiled. Because now, I remembered something he didn't. Proof. It started with a problem. The local hardware store kept running out of screws. No one could explain why. Their system was broken, ordering too much of what didn't sell and never enough of what did. Ethan brought it up at dinner. I said, "What if the system could predict demand based on weather season and local trends?" He looked up, eyes wide. "You can do that." I nodded. That night I pulled out graph paper, mapped out the logic. If A happens and B is true, then adjust C by 15%. Basic to me, but to him it was magic. We coded it together. Me explaining how each line affected the next. Him typing faster than I could think. He called it E-Flow. Said it sounded cooler. I let him have it. 2 months later, his teacher entered the project into a regional startup challenge. They won. $1,000 prize. Press coverage. A photo of Ethan holding the trophy. I wasn't in the frame. I didn't mind at the time, but now, watching his company use the same logic, the same bones, and hearing him say he built it from scratch, it wasn't just disrespect. It was theft in a 3-piece suit. He didn't just forget me. He recycled my work, packaged it, and called it vision. And now, it was time to remind him builders don't forget their blueprints. 3 days passed, I didn't call, didn't text, didn't do anything except think. Then out of nowhere my phone rang. Unknown number, area code San Francisco. I almost let it go, but something nudged me. Frank Miller. The voice was sharp, professional, but not cold. This is Peter Lang. I'm on the board at eFlow. I know this is unusual, but I think we need to talk. I paused. He continued. Ethan's been rewriting the company's origin story. Some of us found documents from 2011. A few signatures. Yours. My heart skipped. I said nothing. I dug deeper, he said. Old patent drafts, notes in your handwriting. And he stopped. Frank, I'm not calling to stir the pot, but if Ethan's omitting your contribution from the narrative, that's more than unethical. I exhaled slowly. Why now, I asked. He hesitated. Then, because next quarter eFlow goes public, Ethan's story is the product. If it's false, investors deserve to know. It wasn't just personal anymore. It was legal, it was public, and it was starting to unravel. I looked at the old photo of Ethan, age 16, holding that trophy like it was the world, and whispered, "You just made your first real mistake, son." That night after the call with Peter, I couldn't sleep again. Not out of anger, but clarity. I went back to the garage, pulled out a rusted metal box from the top shelf. It still had a broken lock hanging loose. Inside were scraps of memory concert tickets, birthday cards, and near the bottom, a folded letter with Ethan's messy handwriting. The date said June 2009. He would have been 17. I unfolded it slowly, careful not to tear the edges. It read, "Dad, if we win the science fair, I'll tell them it was your idea. I'll say I was just the hands and you were the brain. I know I act like I don't listen, but I do, I always have. Sometimes I push you away just to see if you'll stay. Thanks for always staying." I froze. My fingers gripped the paper tighter. A tremble ran through my chest, not from cold, but from the ache of remembering who he once was. He used to be kind, grateful, a little arrogant, sure but honest. That boy was gone, replaced by a man who locked me out at Christmas and buried my name in favor of a cleaner narrative. But this letter, it was something. Proof not of ownership, but of truth. And truth is more dangerous than pride. Monday morning, gray sky, coffee cold in my hand. I sat in the waiting room of Kessler & Rowe, a small firm in downtown Indianapolis. Nothing fancy, but sharp, honest. A young assistant called my name. I followed her past a row of framed degrees until we reached a narrow office. The lawyer, Miss Harper, stood up. Firm handshake, eyes sharp behind rectangular glasses. "Mr. Miller, you mentioned an intellectual property dispute." I nodded, set the folder down on her desk. She opened it. Inside printouts of the original algorithm. Emails between me and Ethan. The letter he wrote at 17. She studied each page. Paused. "This logic model, it's clean, time-stamped. Do you have any digital backups?" "On an external drive," I said. "Still boots." She leaned back, thinking. "Mr. Miller, if your algorithm was used as the foundation for eFlow's core tech, you may have grounds, especially if they never listed you in the IP filings." "He said I was dead," I whispered. She looked up, eyebrows raised. "Then let's bring you back to life." I didn't want his money, didn't want revenge in courtrooms. I just wanted the truth to speak louder than the fiction. And now it finally had a voice and legal standing. It started as a whisper. A niche tech blog ran an article titled, "The Missing Man Behind eFlow." It didn't go viral, not at first, But 2 days later, a Reddit thread exploded. Who is Frank Miller, and why did eFlow erase him? Screenshots appeared. Old yearbook photos. A local newspaper clip from 2010. Father-son team wins regional tech competition. And there it was. Me in a flannel shirt holding a printout of the algorithm beside a younger Ethan. Smiling. By Friday, TechCrunch picked it up. eFlow under fire. Omitted. Co-founder emerges ahead of IPO. CNBC followed, then Forbes, then silence from Ethan's team. No statements, no denials. Just a quiet update to their website removing the self-made headline. I watched from my kitchen table, black coffee in hand, as anchors debated. Was this a simple oversight or a calculated erasure? And for the first time in years, my name, Frank Miller, was trending. I didn't ask for fame, didn't want a stage. But when your silence gets weaponized against you, sometimes the only choice left is to speak through truth and let the noise echo where it belongs. The knock came at dusk. I opened the door. There he was. Ethan. Gray coat. Eyes sunken. Lips pressed tight like he'd rehearsed every word, but none of them felt right. "Can I come in?" I didn't answer. Just stepped aside. He walked in slow. Looked around like he didn't recognize the place. Same couch, same clock ticking, same father. We sat. Silence sat with us. Then, "Why now?" I asked. His jaw clenched. He looked at the floor. "The board's nervous. The IPO's delayed. They think I lied. You put that article out." "No," I said, but I didn't stop it either. He scoffed. "You want money? I want honesty," I replied. "You told the world you built eFlow, but it was built with my blood, my time, my trust." His eyes flared. "You never believed in me. I taught you how to believe, Ethan." "Beat. You think a press cycle fixes this?" I asked. He stood up. "This isn't revenge, Dad, it's business." I stood too, face to face. Then remembered this business forgets, but history never does. He left. Door shut louder than he meant. But the damage, already done, years ago. Bright lights, dozens of cameras, microphones lined up like firing squads. Ethan stood at the podium. Dark suit, no smile. A room full of journalists watched, not waiting for innovation, but confession. He cleared his throat. "Good afternoon. I want to address the recent concerns regarding the origin of eFlow technologies. There were contributions made, foundational ones, by someone I failed to acknowledge. That man is my father, Frank Miller. A wave of shutters, flashbulbs, silence. In my pursuit of success, I let pride rewrite history. I distanced myself from the person who helped shape both the technology and the man behind it. That was wrong." He paused, eyes scanning the room but not really seeing it. "Effective today, Frank Miller will be reinstated as co-founder and technical advisor emeritus. It doesn't undo the past, but it's a start. Back in Indiana, I watched it all on a flickering screen. No tears, no joy, just breath. Slow, heavy. The kind of breath you take when truth finally walks back in through the front door. But forgiveness, that's a different story. And some stories take longer to write. The garage smelled the same. Old wood, dust. A trace of motor oil baked into the air. I walked past the rusted toolbox, past the worn-out stool, and to the workbench in the corner, my corner. It had been years since I touched anything here, but somehow my hands remembered. I picked up the old mallet. The handle still fit my grip like it used to. I tapped it once on the bench, then again, then again. Each strike echoed not just in the room, but in my chest. Not anger, not grief, just rhythm. Outside, a kid on a bike passed by. Reminded me of Ethan, back when his helmet was too big and he used to yell, "Watch me, Dad." I smiled, barely. then went back to the bench. Redemption doesn't come with applause. It comes in moments like this, quiet, real, earned. I didn't need the world to know I was right. I just needed to remember I'd always been enough. And in that garage, with the hammer in my hand and silence in my bones, I finally did. The past doesn't always knock. Sometimes it waits in the quiet. In that old garage with sawdust on the floor and rust on the vice grip, I remembered who I was before the world asked me to prove it. I wasn't chasing headlines. I wasn't waiting for applause. I was just building, because that's what I knew how to do. They say revenge is loud, messy, explosive. But maybe it isn't. Maybe it's quiet, measured. Maybe revenge is sitting in the same place they left you and being more whole than when they walked away. Ethan didn't heal me. His apology didn't fix what broke. But it cracked open something else, something older, truer. The truth isn't always what you shout. Sometimes it's what you never let go of. In the end, I didn't need him to say thank you. I needed to feel the weight of that hammer, to hear the sound of it strike wood and know I was still here, still building, still me. If you were handed a lie, would you live it or would you burn it down? Just to feel the truth. Sometimes the biggest revenge is not shouting your pain. It's outlasting it. It's building your life so solid, so unshakable that the world has no choice but to notice. Ethan walked away that night thinking he'd done enough. Maybe he had. Maybe he hadn't. But I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for his redemption. Not for the world's validation. Just for one thing, to finish the story on my own terms. So if you're listening, and your truth has been buried under silence, under pride, under fear, dig it up. Pick up your hammer. Start again. You don't need the world to clap. You just need to hear the sound of your own heart beating in sync with your purpose. Because maybe that's the real victory. If this story moved you, share it. You never know who's out there waiting to pick up their hammer and just needs the sound to find their way home.